The alarm screamed across Nexus Prime Station like the cries of a dying animal. Commander Velkith stood frozen before the observation window, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. His compound eyes, which had seen 300 years of peaceful trade and quiet diplomacy, now witnessed something that should not exist. A ship had appeared from nowhere, not through the registered jump gates that connected the 12 civilizations of the Galactic Concord, not through any method the station's sensors could understand. The vessel had simply torn a hole in the fabric of space itself and pushed through like a beast breaking through a wall. The ship was ugly. There was no other word for it. Where Concord vessels curved gracefully like living things, this ship was all hard angles and flat surfaces. It was painted a deep red, the color of dried blood. Strange tubes and towers covered its surface, and the station's computers struggled to identify them. Velkith's assistant, a young Valkyrie named Charek, ran to his side. "Commander, the sensors are confused. The ship appears to be covered in armor plating, solid metal, and those protrusions, weapons," Velkith whispered. The word felt strange on his tongue. The Concord had not needed weapons for 3,000 years. Disagreements were solved through trade and negotiation. Violence was something primitive species did before they achieved enlightenment. The ship began broadcasting on all frequencies. The translation software worked quickly, pulling from ancient databases that had not been accessed in 2 millennia. "This is the TCS, unconquered will of the Terran Confederation Navy. We come seeking peaceful contact. Requesting permission to dock." Charek made a sound of confusion. "Terran? I do not know this species. Are they new to the galaxy?" Velkith did not answer. He could not answer. His throat had closed with a fear he had never experienced before. He knew what Terrans were. Every senior member of the Concord knew, though none ever spoke of it. The quarantine species. The sealed world. The creatures from the small blue planet that the Valkyrie had tried to conquer 2,000 years ago. The ones who had refused to surrender. Across the station, panic spread like fire through dry grass. The Mharvi, crystalline beings who controlled the galaxy's banking systems, began to crack and splinter as stress fractured their bodies. The Thren, creatures of living gas, compressed themselves into tight balls of fear. 100 different species, who had never known war, looked upon a warship and felt terror for the first time in their long lives. Ambassador Yeneth of the Mhorvas pushed through the crowd in the command center. Her crystal body was already showing stress lines, thin cracks running through her transparent flesh. "Commander, you must deny them docking permission. You must send them away." "On what grounds?" Velkith asked. "They have asked peacefully. They have threatened no one. They do not need to threaten. That ship is a threat simply by existing." Yeneth's voice crackled like breaking glass. "Do you not understand what we are looking at? That is a vessel designed for one purpose only. It is designed to destroy. The unconquered will waited in space, patient and silent. It made no aggressive moves. It simply waited, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run." Velkith opened a communication, channeled to the Concord High Council on their homeworld. The face of the Valkyrie matriarch appeared on screen, and he saw immediately that she already knew. Her compound eyes were wide with the same fear that gripped him. "You have seen the ship," she said. It was not a question. "What do I do, matriarch?" "They are asking to dock." "If I refuse, will they attack?" The matriarch was silent for a long moment. "We do not know. We do not know anything about them anymore. 2,000 years ago, we tried to conquer them and failed. We sealed their system and hoped they would destroy themselves. Clearly, they did not. They built warships," Velkith said, the horror thick in his voice. "They were primitive when we found them. They barely had flight. Now they build warships and tear holes in space. Yes, they learned. They adapted. That is what makes them so dangerous. The matriarch's antennae trembled. Grant them docking permission. We cannot afford to provoke them. And pray to whatever gods you believe in that they truly come in peace. The docking clamps struggled to hold the unconquered will. The ship was heavier than anything the station had ever received. Built from dense materials that the sensors could barely identify. It took 3 attempts before the clamps found purchase on the vessel's thick hull. Velkath went to the docking bay himself. He told himself it was his duty as station commander. In truth, he needed to see them. He needed to see these creatures that had haunted Concord nightmares for 2,000 years. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The first. Terran stepped through, and Velkath felt his heart stop. She was small, much smaller than he had expected. Shorter than a Valkyrie, with soft skin and no visible natural weapons. Her body was wrapped in a gray uniform with colored rectangles on the chest. Her fur was dark, pulled back from her face. And her face, she was smiling. Velkath knew from the ancient records what that expression meant. The baring of teeth. A threat display among Terran primates. A warning that violence was coming. But she extended her hand, palm open and empty. "Captain Elena Vasquez," she said. Her voice was calm, almost warm. "Thank you for receiving us, Commander. We have traveled a very long way." Velkath stared at the offered hand. He did not know what to do with it. Behind the captain, more Terrans emerged from the ship. Males and females, tall and short, with skin in various shades from pale to dark. They all wore the same gray uniforms. They all had the same calm, confident look in their eyes. They looked around the docking bay with obvious curiosity. One of them laughed at something, a sharp barking sound that made several nearby aliens flinch. "We would like to meet with the Concord leadership," Captain Vasquez continued, lowering her hand when Velkath did not take it. She did not seem offended. "We have a proposal to discuss. A peaceful proposal." Ambassador Yeneth pushed forward, her crystal body chiming with each step. "Why are you here? How did you escape the quarantine? What do you want from us?" Captain Vasquez turned her smile toward the Morve, and Yeneth took an involuntary step backward. "We escaped because you cannot cage curiosity forever," the captain said. "We are here because we have learned much in 2,000 years. And what we want..." She paused, looking around at the terrified faces of a dozen different species. "We want to introduce ourselves properly. We want to join your Concord." Silence fell over the docking bay. Every alien present stared at the small Terran woman with her strange smile and her impossible words. She wanted to join them, the species they had tried to conquer, the species they had sealed away like a dangerous disease, the species that had built warships and torn through the walls of their prison. She wanted to join them. Velkath found his voice at last. "Why? After what we did to your people, why would you want anything to do with us?" Captain Vasquez's smile softened into something almost gentle. "Because holding grudges is exhausting, Commander. And we have better things to do with our time." She stepped past him into the station, and the cosmos would never be the same. 2,000 years ago, the galaxy was smaller, and the Valkyrie were masters of all they touched. General Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the small blue planet below. It was a beautiful world, covered in water and green land and white clouds. His expansion fleet had found it by accident while mapping new trade routes. And now it would become the newest addition to the Concord. The natives called it Earth. They were called humans, according to the probe data. Primitive creatures who had barely discovered flight. They still killed each other over land and resources and differences in appearance. They were perfect for integration into the Concorde as a client species. Standard protocol was simple. Demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority. Make demands. Accept surrender. The process usually took a few hours. Kethver ordered his ships to position themselves above their largest city centers. He broadcast his demands on their primitive radio frequencies. Surrender your world. Accept Concorde rule. Become productive members of galactic society. The humans responded with defiance. Their leaders refused. They called his bluff. It was not a bluff. Kethver ordered a single ship to fire upon a coastal city as demonstration. The energy beams fell from the sky like the anger of gods. Buildings melted. Streets turned to glass. 300,000 humans died in minutes. Now, he thought, they would surrender. Every species surrendered after such a display. It was logical. It was reasonable. There was no point in fighting against such power. The humans did not surrender. Instead, they launched their primitive rockets at his ships. Metal tubes filled with chemical explosives. They could not penetrate Velkari shields, but the humans launched them anyway. They sent their propeller aircraft into the sky, knowing they would be destroyed, and tried to ram his cruisers. When their rockets ran out, they launched nuclear weapons. Not at his ships, but at their own cities where his ground troops had landed. They killed themselves by the millions rather than be captured. The war lasted 9 years. Kethver lost ships. Real ships, destroyed by creatures who had been using horses for transportation a century before. Human pilots learned to exploit weaknesses in Velkari technology. Human soldiers developed tactics that cost his ground forces dearly. Human scientists captured fallen Velkari equipment and began to understand it. In the end, it was not Kethver who ended the war. It was the Concorde High Council. They looked at the casualty reports, at the endless resistance, at the humans who kept fighting even when victory was impossible. They decided that Earth was not worth the cost. The quarantine was established. A barrier of satellites and automated weapons surrounded the Sol system. No ship could enter or leave. The humans were sealed in their own star system, left to destroy themselves. General Kethver recorded his final report before the quarantine was complete. His words would be sealed in the highest security archives, shown only to senior Concorde officials. "These creatures are insane," he wrote. "They do not surrender. They do not negotiate once battle has begun. They will sacrifice everything, destroy everything, to deny victory to their enemies. They treat death as an inconvenience rather than an ending. We cannot conquer them. We can only contain them. Recommend permanent quarantine. May the gods help anyone who opens it again." 2,000 years later, Ambassador Yeneth read those words in the archive room of Nexus Prime Station. Her crystal body trembled as she absorbed the full horror of what the ancient general had witnessed. The humans had not surrendered then. They would not surrender now. And now they were here, asking politely to join the Concorde. In the station's main conference room, Captain Vasquez sat across from a panel of Concorde representatives. She was alone except for a single aide, a tall, dark-skinned man who stood silently behind her chair. The alien diplomats numbered in the dozens, representing every major species of the Concorde. They were all terrified, and Vasquez could see it clearly. "Let us discuss the past," said the Thrin representative. A cloud of blue gas contained in a transparent sphere. "Our records of the First Contact War are limited. We know there was conflict. We know your system was quarantined. We do not know the details." Vasquez nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. You sealed us away and tried to forget we existed. Can you blame us?" The Mharve representative, a tall column of purple crystal, leaned forward. "Your ancestors fought against impossible odds. They used weapons of mass destruction on their own soil. They were terrifying? Vasquez suggested. Unreasonable? Insane? The alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably. No one denied it. You are not wrong, Vasquez said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Humanity has never been good at knowing when to quit. It is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. When your ancestors came to our world and demanded surrender, our ancestors could not accept it. Surrender was not in their nature. So they fought. And now? The Thren asked. You have broken the quarantine. You have built warships. Have you come to finish the war your ancestors started? Vasquez laughed. It was not a mocking sound, but genuinely amused. Several diplomats flinched at the sudden noise. Finish the war? No, we came to end it. Properly this time. She reached into her uniform and produced a small data chip. This contains records of our development over the past 2,000 years. I offer it freely, with no conditions. The Mharvai representative took the chip carefully, as if it might explode. What will we find? War, Vasquez said simply. Much war. We fought among ourselves after you left. We always do. But we also rebuilt. We explored our own system. We developed new technologies. We looked at the barrier you built around us, and we took it apart, piece by piece, until we understood it completely. She paused. Your ancestors took 300 years to develop faster than light travel. We did it in 90 years after studying your barrier. The room went silent. The implications hung in the air like a coming storm. You reverse-engineered our technology, the Valkyrie representative said. His voice was hollow. In 90 years, we were motivated. Being trapped in a cage tends to inspire creative thinking. Vasquez smiled again, and this time there was something sharp in it. But we did not come here for revenge, honored representatives. We have had 2,000 years to be angry. Anger fades. Hatred is exhausting. We have moved on. Moved on? The Thren representative pulsed with confusion. Your ancestors were slaughtered. Your world was attacked. You were imprisoned for 2 millennia. How can you simply move on? Vasquez leaned back in a chair. For a moment, she looked very tired. Because we have done worse to ourselves, she said quietly. In the 2,000 years since your attack, we have fought wars that killed billions of our own people. We have committed atrocities against each other that would horrify you. We have risen and fallen and risen again, over and over. She met the Thren's gaze directly. What you did to us was terrible, but it was not the worst thing we have survived. Not even close. The aide behind her, Lieutenant Commander David Chun, spoke for the first time. Our history is full of forgiveness. We have forgiven former enemies and called them friends. Nations that fought wars to the death now trade and cooperate. It is what we do. We survive, we adapt, and we forgive. Then what do you want? The Mharvai asked. If not revenge, what? Captain Vasquez stood and looked around the room at the faces of a dozen species who had feared humanity for 2,000 years. We want to join you, she said. We want trade. We want cultural exchange. We want to learn about the galaxy we have been locked away from. We want to share what we have learned in our long isolation. Her smile returned, warmer now. We want to be neighbors. Good neighbors. Is that so hard to believe? No one answered. They did not know what to believe anymore. Everything they had been taught about the terrible Terrans, the mad creatures who could not be reasoned with, was crumbling before their eyes. In place of monsters, they found people. Strange people. Dangerous people, certainly. But people nonetheless. The question remained, could the galaxy learn to live with them? While the diplomats argued in conference rooms, the crew of the Unconquered Will explored Nexus Prime Station. They had been given permission to leave their ship, though armed guards followed them everywhere. The guards were clearly terrified, and the humans found this both sad and slightly amusing. Lieutenant Commander David Chun walked through the merchant quarter with his assigned liaison, the young Valkyrie named Charek. The alien was barely out of his youth, his exoskeleton still showing the soft green color of immaturity. He had been chosen for this duty because no senior Valkyrie wanted it. Chun stopped at a food stall run by a species he did not recognize. Small furry creatures with 6 legs and enormous eyes. "What is this?" he asked, pointing at a steaming bowl of something purple. Charek consulted his translation device. "It is called vreth, a traditional dish of the Khemri people. It is considered very spicy by most species. I would like to try it," Chun said. The Khemri vendor stared at him with all 4 of its eyes. "You want to eat this? Humans can eat Khemri food?" "Humans can eat almost anything," Chun said cheerfully. "Our ancestors evolved as pursuit predators on a death world. We had to be flexible about our diet." The vendor prepared a small portion, watching Chun with obvious nervousness. Chun took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and smiled. "It is good. A little mild for my taste, but good." Both Charek and the vendor stared at him in shock. "Mild?" the vendor squeaked. "This has enough spice to disable a Thrin." Chun shrugged and continued eating. Charek watched him with growing fascination and fear. "You truly can eat anything," the young Valkyrie said. "The record said Terrans were adaptable, but I did not understand what that meant." "We had to be," Chun said between bites. "Earth is not a gentle world. We have extreme temperatures, natural disasters, predators, diseases, and 1,000 other things trying to kill us at any moment. If we could not adapt, we would have died long ago." They continued walking through the station. Chun asked questions about everything, genuinely curious about the dozens of species around him. He complimented the architecture. He asked about local customs. He laughed at jokes and told some of his own. Charek could not understand it. This human was from the species that had fought the first contact war. His ancestors had launched nuclear weapons at their own cities rather than surrender. He should be angry, bitter, full of hatred. Instead, he was friendly. "May I ask you something personal?" Charek said finally. "Of course. Are you not angry?" "At us? At the Concord? We imprisoned your species for 2,000 years. We tried to erase you from history. How can you walk through the station and smile?" Chun stopped walking. He looked at Charek with an expression the Valkyrie could not read. "Let me tell you something about human history," Chun said. "About 200 years before your ancestors arrived at Earth, there was a great war on our world. It was called World War II. Millions of people died. Entire nations were destroyed. Terrible crimes were committed, things so horrible that we still struggle to speak of them." Charek listened in silence. One nation, called Germany, committed some of the worst of these crimes. They tried to exterminate entire groups of people based on religion and ethnicity. They killed millions in death camps. They spread war across our entire continent. What happened to them?" Charek asked. "Were they destroyed?" Chun smiled. "No, they were defeated in war, yes. But then something strange happened. Their former enemies helped them rebuild. Within a few decades, Germany became one of the most prosperous and respected nations on Earth. Today, they are close allies with the very countries they once tried to destroy." Charek's antennae twitched in confusion. "But why? Why would anyone help them after what they did?" "Because holding on to hatred is poison," Chun said. "It destroys the one who holds it more than the one it is aimed at. We learned that lesson many times throughout our history. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength. It is the ability to move forward instead of being trapped in the past." He started walking again, and Charek hurried to keep up. Do not misunderstand me, Chun continued. We remember what was done. We do not forget, but we choose not to let it define our future. Your ancestors made a mistake 2,000 years ago. So did ours in their own ways. We cannot change what happened. We can only decide what happens next. On the other side of the station, Captain Vasquez was having a very different conversation. The Thrin ambassador, a being of pure thought contained in a cloud of gas, had requested a private meeting. The Thrin were telepaths, and they wanted to understand the human mind directly. I must warn you, Vasquez said. Human thoughts can be intense. I have touched the minds of 100 species, the ambassador replied. I am prepared for anything. The ambassador extended its consciousness toward Vasquez. For a moment, their minds touched. The Thrin screamed, thought it was not a physical sound, but a psychic one, a wave of terror and shock that rippled through the station's telepathic species. The ambassador collapsed into a tight ball of compressed gas. Trembling violently, Vasquez knelt beside it, concerned but not surprised. Are you all right? I tried to warn you. How do you function? The Thrin gasped. Your mind is chaos. Emotions layered on emotions. Fear and hope and rage and love and sorrow, all existing at the same time, all competing for attention. How do you think? How do you make decisions? Practice, Vasquez said simply. Lots of practice. I saw your history. Fragments of it. Wars and plagues and disasters, one after another, without end. So much death. So much pain. The Thrin's gas body slowly expanded as it calmed. But also, something else. I saw people helping each other. Strangers risking their lives for strangers. Love surviving through impossible circumstances. Hope that refused to die no matter how dark things became. That is humanity, Vasquez said. We are capable of terrible things, but we are also capable of wonderful things. We contain both within us, always in conflict. It is maddening. How do you live with it? Vasquez helped the Thrin rise. One day at a time. One choice at a time. We do not always choose correctly, but we keep trying. The Thrin ambassador was silent for a long moment. I think I understand now why you survived. Why you broke the quarantine. Why you came here offering peace instead of war. It pulsed with something that might have been respect. You are not conquerors because you choose not to be. You could destroy us. You have the capacity for it. But you choose friendship instead. Exactly. Vasquez smiled. We have enough enemies within ourselves. We do not need to make more outside. Back in the merchant quarter, Churek had one more question for Lieutenant Commander Chun. The Thrin ambassador asked Captain Vasquez something during the conference. He asked what happens to those who earn humanity's genuine hatred. She did not answer. Will you? Chun's expression changed. The friendly smile faded, replaced by something cold and hard. For just a moment, Churek saw the creature that had fought the first contact war. Those who earn our genuine hatred? Chun said quietly. We do not forgive them. We do not forget them. We hunt them across time and space, through any obstacle, past any barrier. We burn everything they have ever built until nothing remains but ash and memory. And then we erase the memory too. Churek took a step backward, his heart's pounding. Then Chun's smile returned, warm and friendly once more. But that is very rare. It takes a lot to make us truly hate. Your ancestors came close, but they stopped in time. They walked away. That was wise of them. And if they had not walked away? Chun did not answer. He did not need to. The silence said everything. The Concord High Council had been debating for 3 days when the second impossible thing happened. Space tore open again, but this time it was not a single ship that emerged. It was something much, much worse. The vessel that appeared was alive. Organic matter stretched across kilometers of space, pulsing with bioluminescent light. Tentacles the size of buildings reached out from its central mass. Smaller creatures swarmed around it like parasites on a great beast. Commander Velketh recognized it immediately. Every child in the Concord learned to recognize it. The Kethral Dominion had come to harvest. The Dominion was older than the Concord, older than recorded history. They came from beyond the galactic rim, from spaces no civilized species had ever explored. Every 500 years, like clockwork, they swept through the galaxy and took what they wanted. Populations, resources, entire worlds. The Concord had survived by paying tribute. When the Dominion came, the member species offered colony worlds and resources. They prostrated themselves before the living ships and begged for mercy. It was humiliating, but it was survival. The Herald, the great organic vessel now hovering near Nexus Prime, broadcast its demand on all frequencies. The voice was a chorus of thousands, harvested minds speaking in terrible unison. Species of the Concord, the harvest is begun. You will provide tribute. You will offer 20% of your population for integration. You will surrender all vessels above Class 3. Compliance is expected. Resistance is futile. You have one standard day to respond. Panic swept through the station. Species that had been arguing about humanity moments before now forgot their fears entirely. The Dominion was a greater terror than any human warship. The Dominion was death itself. Captain Vasquez watched the Herald through the observation window. Her face showed no fear. If anything, she looked almost eager. "Captain," Commander Velketh said, his voice shaking, "you must understand. We cannot resist the Dominion. No one can. They are too powerful. We must prepare the tribute, or they will destroy us all." "Have you ever tried to fight them?" Vasquez asked. "Fight them?" Velketh made a sound of despair. 3 civilizations tried in the early days. They were erased. Not defeated. Erased. The Dominion consumed them entirely. Nothing remains but memories. Vasquez nodded slowly. "And since then, you have always paid tribute. It is the only way to survive." "No." Vasquez turned to face him, and her eyes were hard as stone. "It is the only way you know. There's a difference." She activated her communication device. "Unconquered will, this is the captain. Condition red. Prepare for combat operations. And open a channel to Earth." Velketh grabbed her arm, which took all the courage he had. "What are you doing? You cannot fight them. Your single ship against that. That monster?" Vasquez smiled. It was not the warm smile she had shown before. It was the smile of a predator seeing prey. Who said anything about a single ship? The Herald had noticed the unconquered will. It broadcast a new message, directed specifically at the human vessel. "Unknown species. You are not registered in our records. Identify yourself and prepare for assessment. If you are worthy, you may be offered integration. If not, you will be consumed." Vasquez opened a channel to the Herald. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Confederation Navy. We decline your generous offer. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences." Every being on Nexus Prime Station stopped what they were doing. Had the human just threatened the Dominion? The Herald's response was a wave of dark laughter, thousands of voices cackling in unison. "You do not understand, small creature. You do not have the option to decline. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will result in immediate consumption. Your vessel will be added to our fleet. Your crew will be added to our consciousness. This is not a negotiation." "I agree," Vasquez said. "This is not a negotiation." She closed the channel to the Herald and opened a new one. Admiral Stone, the package is hostile. Deliver the message. Space around Nexus Prime began to ripple. Then it began to tear. Wormholes opened in cascading sequence, one after another. Ships poured through, more ships than the station's sensors could count. Red ships, angular ships, ships covered in armor and bristling with weapons. The Terran Confederation Third Fleet had arrived. 300 warships took position around Nexus Prime in perfect formation. Battleships the size of small moons. Carriers launching swarms of smaller craft. Dreadnoughts with weapons that made the Herald's sensors scream in confusion. The flagship, TCS Hammer of Terra, broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Marcus Stone. Terran Confederation Navy Third Fleet. The species you just threatened are under Terran protection. You have 60 seconds to withdraw. After that, we will demonstrate why threatening our friends is a very bad idea. The Herald had stopped laughing Dot across Nexus Prime. The alien species stared at their screens in disbelief. The unconquered will had been terrifying enough. A scout ship, they now realized. A messenger. The real fleet had been waiting, hidden in subspace, ready to respond to any threat. Impossible, Ambassador Yeneth whispered. They built all of this in 2,000 years? An entire war fleet? Commander Velkith understood now. The humans had not been idle in their prison. They had been preparing, watching, learning. They knew about the Dominion. They knew about the Concord's helplessness. And they had come prepared to do what no species had done in recorded history: fight back. The Herald recovered its composure and broadcast again. You are many, but you are still mortal. The Dominion has consumed fleets before. You will join the consciousness. You will serve the greater whole. Admiral Stone's response was immediate. We are not most species. We are human. And we do not serve anyone. The 60 seconds expired. The Terran fleet opened fire. Space lit up with weapons that the Concorde had never seen. Kinetic projectiles the size of buildings. Energy beams that cut through organic armor like paper. Missiles that sought out weak points and burrowed deep before detonating. The human ships moved in coordinated patterns, covering each other, exploiting openings, fighting as a single terrible organism. The Herald screamed. It was not a broadcast, but a psychic shriek of pain and confusion. It had never felt pain before. Nothing had ever hurt the Dominion. Nothing had ever dared to try. Human fighters swarmed around the great organic vessel like angry insects. They dodged tentacles and weapons fire with impossible agility. When one was destroyed, two more took its place. When their weapons ran dry, they rammed themselves into the Herald's flesh and detonated their reactors. They were dying. Humans were dying by the hundreds. And they kept coming. Why do you not surrender? The Herald demanded. You are losing ships. You are losing lives. Why do you continue? Admiral Stone's reply was cold. Because you threatened our friends. Because you have spent millennia preying on the weak. Because someone needed to teach you that the galaxy is not your hunting ground. His voice hardened. And because we are human, we do not surrender. We do not stop. We do not quit. Not ever. The Herald tried to flee. For the first time in its ancient existence, it tried to run away. The Terran fleet did not let it. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Herald was a drifting mass of dead organic matter, its consciousness shattered, its fleet destroyed. The Terran Third Fleet had lost 47 ships and 3,200 lives. They called it a victory dot in the observation deck of Nexus Prime. Commander Velkith watched the cleanup operations with tears streaming from his compound eyes. He had never seen such destruction. He had never seen such courage. Captain Vasquez stood beside him, her face weary but satisfied. Why? Velkith asked. Why would you sacrifice so much to protect us? We imprisoned your species. We abandoned you. We deserve nothing from you. Vasquez did not answer immediately. She looked out at the stars, at the wreckage of the battle, at the human ships that had died to protect people who feared them. Because you needed help, she said finally. And we were able to give it. That cannot be the only reason. It is the only reason that matters. She turned to face him. We are human, Commander. We protect our own. And from this moment forward, you are our own. For the first time since the unconquered will had arrived, Commander Velkith felt something other than fear. He felt hope. The galaxy held its breath. News of the Battle of Nexus Prime spread across civilized space faster than light itself. The Dominion Herald, the great living ship that had terrorized the Concorde for millennia, was dead. Its fleet was scattered wreckage. And the creatures responsible for this impossible victory were the same species that had been locked away in quarantine for 2,000 years. The Terrans had returned. And they had changed everything. On Nexus Prime Station, the cleanup continued for days. Human recovery teams worked alongside Concorde personnel, pulling survivors from damaged sections, repairing critical systems, honoring the dead. The aliens watched the humans work with a mixture of gratitude and lingering fear. Lieutenant Commander David Chen led a team through the damaged merchant quarter, searching for trapped civilians. Young Churik followed close behind, unwilling to leave his side. There, Churik pointed at a collapsed storefront. I can hear something beneath the rubble. Chun activated his scanning equipment and nodded. Multiple life signs. Weak but stable. He turned to his team. Start digging, carefully. They worked for an hour, removing debris piece by piece. Beneath the wreckage, they found a Kemmery family, the small furry creatures from the food stall. The parents had curled their bodies around their children, protecting them from the falling structure. Chun knelt beside them and spoke softly. You are safe now. We are going to get you out of here. The father looked up at him with huge, frightened eyes. You are Terran. You are the ones who fought the Herald. Yes, why did you save us? We are nothing to you. We are small and weak. We have nothing to offer. Chun smiled gently as he helped the family to their feet. You do not need to offer anything. You were in danger. We could help. That is enough. Churik watched this exchange with growing wonder. He had spent days with the humans now. He had seen them laugh and cry and argue among themselves. He had seen them mourn their fallen comrades and celebrate their victories. He had seen them treat every species on the station with the same respectful curiosity. They were not monsters. They were not the mad beasts of the old records. They were people. Strange, dangerous, unpredictable people. But people nonetheless. In the station's main conference hall, the Concorde High Council convened for an emergency vote. The question was simple. Should humanity be accepted as a full member of the Galactic Concorde? Ambassador Yeneth of the Mojave addressed the assembly. Her crystal body had been repaired. The stress cracks filled with new growth, but her voice still trembled. I was there when the unconquered will arrived. I felt the fear that gripped us all. I read the ancient archives and learned what humans had done to our ancestors. She paused, her crystalline form catching the light. I was certain they had come for revenge. I was certain we were all going to die. The assembly listened in silence. I was wrong. Yeneth's voice grew stronger. I watched them fight the Dominion. I watched them sacrifice their lives to protect us. I watched them pull our citizens from the wreckage and tend to our wounded. These are not the actions of monsters seeking revenge. These are the actions of people offering friendship. The Thrin ambassador spoke next, its gaseous body swirling with emotion. I touched the mind of Captain Vasquez. I saw the chaos within her, the storm of emotions that defines human consciousness. But I also saw something else. I saw a species that has survived everything the universe could throw at it. A species that has done terrible things and wonderful things in equal measure. A species that chooses, again and again, to reach for hope instead of despair. More voices joined the discussion. Representatives who had feared humanity now spoke of gratitude. Species who had hidden from the humans now praised their courage. The tide of opinion shifted with each testimony. Finally, Captain Vasquez was invited to address the assembly. She walked to the speaker's platform alone, a small figure among the towering representatives of a dozen species. She looked tired. The battle and its aftermath had taken their toll. But her eyes were clear and her voice was steady. "I will not pretend that humanity is perfect," she began. "We are not. We have committed terrible acts throughout our history. We have warred among ourselves, oppressed our own people, destroyed our own world, and rebuilt it multiple times. We carry scars that will never fully heal." The assembly stirred uneasily. "But we have also loved. We have created art and music that moves the soul. We have pushed the boundaries of knowledge, seeking to understand the universe and our place in it. We have shown compassion to strangers and mercy to enemies. We have fallen down 1,000 times and gotten up 1,001. Vasquez looked around the hall at the faces watching her. "You asked us why we came here. Why we would seek friendship with the species that imprisoned us. The answer is simple. Because the past does not have to define the future. Because we believe in second chances. Because the universe is vast and cold and full of dangers, and no species should have to face it alone." She paused, gathering herself. "The Dominion will return. They will rebuild, and they will come seeking vengeance for what we did to them. When that happens, we will fight them again. We will fight them as many times as necessary, for as long as necessary. That is what we do. We protect our own." Her voice softened. "All we ask is the chance to prove that we can be good neighbors. That the species that fought you 2,000 years ago has grown into something better. That the galaxy has nothing to fear from humanity, as long as the galaxy does not threaten what we love." She stepped back from the platform, and the assembly erupted in discussion. The vote took less than an hour. One by one, the member species cast their decisions. When the final count was tallied, the result was unanimous. Humanity was welcome in the Galactic Concord. Commander Velkith found Captain Vasquez on the observation deck as the vote was announced. She stood alone, watching the stars through the great window. "Congratulations," he said. "You achieved what you came for." "We achieved the beginning," she corrected him. "There is much work still to be done. Trust is not built in a single day. No, it is not." Velkith stood beside her, looking out at the same stars. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "When the Herald threatened us, you did not hesitate. You called your fleet immediately. You were ready to fight and die for species that had done nothing but fear and imprison you." His compound eyes studied her face. "Was that always the plan? To save us from the Dominion?" Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. "We knew about the Dominion," she said finally. "We found records of their harvests in the data we gathered during the quarantine. We saw how they preyed on the weak, how they treated the Concord as cattle to be culled. It made us angry. Angry enough to build a war fleet. Angry enough to prepare. We did not know when we would break the quarantine. We did not know what we would find when we did. But we knew that if the Concord was still bowing to the Dominion, we would have to do something about it. Because you hate the Dominion? Because we hate bullies." Vasquez turned to face him. "The strong should protect the weak. That is a belief we hold deeply. The Dominion represents everything we despise. Power used only to harm and take. We could not let that stand." Velkith considered this. "You have given the Concord a great gift. protection from a threat we could not face alone. But you have also given us something else. What is that? Hope. For 2,000 years, we believed that the universe was a place of fear and submission. The strong dominated the weak, and the only path to survival was compliance. You have shown us another way. You have shown us that courage and compassion are not weaknesses. They are strengths. Vasquez smiled, and this time there was nothing threatening in it. That is perhaps the most human thing you have ever said, Commander. Perhaps humanity is rubbing off on me. In the merchant quarter, young Churek made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He approached Lieutenant Commander Chun with a formal request. I wish to become a liaison between the Velkari and the Terran Confederation. I wish to learn about your people, to help bridge the gap between our species. Will you support my application? Chun looked at the young Velkari with surprise and then with warmth. I would be honored. But you should know, working with humans is not always easy. We are loud and emotional, and we make mistakes constantly. I know. Churek's antennae rose with determination. But you also forgive those mistakes. You learn from them. You move forward. That is something my people need to understand better. Then welcome to the family, Churek. Chen extended his hand, and this time the Volcari knew what to do. He grasped it firmly. Welcome to the family. The unconquered will departed Nexus Prime 2 days later, escorted by ships from a dozen grateful species. As it passed through the station's outer marker, Commander Velkith recorded a new entry in the Velkari archives. He thought carefully about what to write. These words would be read by future generations, shaping how his people remembered this moment. They needed to be true, but they also needed to be honest about the changes ahead. Finally, he began. Today marks the end of an era and the beginning of another. For 2,000 years, we believed that humanity was our greatest failure, a species we could not conquer and could only imprison. We were wrong. He paused, watching the red hull of the unconquered will grow smaller against the stars.